All right. First of all, I hope that all of you have done good in your internal examination. And moving forward, today we shall look into what is communication, how important the communication is. All right. So let us know the meaning of communication. Now, what is communication? Communication means the process of passing information and understanding from one person to another. It is defined as the process of exchange of information, ideas, and opinions which bring about integration of interests, aims, and efforts among the members of a group organized for achievement of predetermined goals. So basically, communication is nothing but the transfer of information from one person to the other person, right, and understanding of that information, okay, so that you can have a common interest, common aim, and common goal for all the members of the team in order to achieve the predetermined objectives or goals. So that is what we mean by communication. Right. Now, let us look into the importance of communication. Why is communication important? Let us look into it. The communication is important because of the following reasons. The first one is every aspect of manager's job, may it be planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling, involves communication. Hello? Yeah, somebody has left the audio on. Okay, fine. Right. So every aspect of manager's job, may it be planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling, involves communication. Researchers have shown that about 75% of managers' time is spent in communication, which goes about to show that as a manager, the most important job for you is to communicate the information to your subordinates. Okay, so every aspect of manager's job, okay, starting from the basic functions of management, that is planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling, everything involves some or the other way of communication. So most of the time of a manager is spent in communicating the information to the subordinates, and hence communication becomes important for managers. Right. Now let us look at the second point. Nothing contributes so much to managerial effectiveness as effective communication. Managers do not deal with things but with the information about things. So here he says that uh, if you want to have an effective management, okay, or effective managerial aspects, then the most important thing that you have to concentrate is to have effective communication, right? Because for the fact that managers do not deal with things but with the information of things. Okay? They don't really work on the product, but they have to give the information regarding the product. Okay? They have to clearly state, they have to clearly communicate to the subordinates so that subordinates carry out the work without any confusion. I still have students pouring in. Let me just sit with them first. All right. Okay. Right. So the third reason is, however the decision at the top are, they will serve no purpose unless the manager successfully communicate the implication of these decisions to the subordinates who are to implement them. So this to show that whatever the decisions that are taken at the top level management, okay, so it is of no use for any kind of, for any subordinate if that information is not communicated properly by the manager. Right. Okay. Now the fourth one is communication is the essence of organized activity. Hello. Yeah. Communication is the essence of organized activity. It is the basis of direction and leadership. The managers have to communicate to give instructions, orders, and to assign jobs and to fix responsibility. So basically, communication is used by the managers in order to give instructions, to give orders, okay, to assign jobs, to assign responsibilities, right? So for every aspect of it, we require communication. So the fifth point is communication renders the complexity of business intelligible and workable. So whatever the complexity that goes into the business, okay, if you have that communication skills, if you have that effective communication skills, then you could make that complexity more intelligible in the sense it could be understood easily and it could be worked upon, right? So it it is intelligible as well as workable, right? So the sixth one is the better the communication, the more efficient the work performance. Good communication not only obtains the manager's effectiveness but organizational effectiveness too. So it is to say that if you have a better communication, if you have an effective communication, okay, it is not only important for the manager's position, but as a whole, it is important for the organization as well. Okay, if you have an effective communication, if you have a better communication, then obviously, okay, the effectiveness of the organization as a whole gets improved, right? So these are the importance of communication. Now let us look at the diagram here. Now you can see that we have planning, organizing, staffing, leading, and controlling. So these are the functions of management. So every function of management requires what? Requires a communication. Okay. So communication to whom? Communication to internal environment as well as external environment. Now who are the external environment? Customers, suppliers, stockholders, government agencies, community, and others. So these are the external environment, and communication becomes important in order to convey the information at every step of management. Alright, now let us look into the meaning of coordination. What is coordination? Okay, so in general, we say that coordination is to work in sync with each other. Okay, is to work in hand with each other. That's what is coordination, right? So if you have better coordination, you have better output, better productivity. Okay, so let us see. According to Terry, coordination deals with the task of blending efforts in order to ensure successful attainment of an objective. It is accomplished by means of planning, organizing, directing, and controlling. So basically, coordination is nothing but it is the blending of efforts. Okay, you know, the sync of the efforts that have been put by two different departments, so that we could achieve the targets, so that we could achieve the objectives that are set for us. Okay, so this is what is coordination. Okay. So let me read it again. Coordination deals with the task blending efforts. Blending efforts in the sense there are two different efforts. They have to be put together so that they sync with each other and they support one another. Right. For example, let us say you have a project to carry out. Right. So you have two members in a team. Now one does a part of it, the other does the other part of it. Now what is coordination? If both of your efforts are targeted towards accomplishment of the project, are targeted towards the completion of that project, that becomes coordination. Because both of your efforts are in the right direction. They support one another. Okay? They don't pull back. Okay? Sometimes what happens is both of them are putting the efforts, but when they are kind of a mixed together, they pull each other back. No, they have to push one another. They have to support one another. So that is nothing but coordination. Okay. So how it is achieved? It is accomplished by means of planning. If you have better planning, you have better coordination, organizing, of course, directing as well as controlling. Now, let us look at the importance of communication. Sorry, coordination. Sorry. Right. So an organization is consciously coordinated system of cooperative human endeavor focused towards the achievement of certain goals. The need of cooperation arises because what one can do, two can. What one can do, two can do better. The need of coordination arises due to differential perception, orientation, interests, and attitudes of individual members of the organization. In the absence of coordination, members are likely to pull in different directions. There may also be destructive conflicts of interests and goals. Coordination is intended to channelize cooperative efforts and behavior of people along organizationally determined lines and to contain the possibility of conflict within tolerable limits. Okay, so why is coordination important? So basically, what they say is, okay, if you have to be successful, of course, what one can do, okay, if the two persons put in the efforts, they can do it faster. But this is only possible if they have a better coordination, if they are cooperative with each other. Okay, so sometimes what happens is, since there are two different individuals, they have two different interests. Their goals may be different, aims may be different. If you don't channelize them towards the achievement of whatever the objectives that are set for you, and what happens is the efforts are put in, but they tend to pull each other back. Right? So it is the job of a manager to see that all the interests of every individual in the team are coordinated, are channelized, and to have a proper coordination between the team members. Now, why is coordination needed? Because we know that organization is not just a single person thing, it's a group of people. Now, every individual is different, his think process is different, the way he thinks is different, the way he behaves is different. Put into the same situation, different individuals behave in different ways. Okay? And sometimes what happens, there might be conflict amongst the team members itself. So, as a manager, your responsibility is to have a proper coordination between these members of the team. Is to channelize their interest, their aims, their goals. If you don't channelize them properly, okay, there could be the possibility of conflicts amongst each other. So, as a manager, it is the responsibility of his or her to maintain coordination. Right? Now, of course, you don't have techniques of coordination, so let's not dwell in it like that. Alright, so the next thing is controlling. So, what is controlling? According to EFL Breach, control is checking current performance against predetermined standards contained in the plans, with a view to ensure adequate progress and satisfactory performance. Now, what is controlling? He says controlling is nothing but measuring or comparing the current performance towards the set standards, towards the predefined standards, and to say whether you have performed up to the mark or if your performance is lacking, or if your performance is not up to the mark, then some corrective actions have to be suggested. Okay? Now let us say, according to the words of George R. Terry, controlling is determining what is being accomplished, that is, evaluating the performance, and if necessary, applying corrective measures so that the performance takes place according to plans. So George R. Terry says that controlling is nothing but to they measure the performance first of all, and then compare that performance with the set standards, with the benchmark, with the predetermined standards. And if the performance is not up to the mark, if it does not satisfy the minimum requirement, then some corrective actions have to be applied and the performance have to be measured again. Have to be measured again, right? So this is nothing but controlling. Now, let us look into the steps in controlling. Right. So the first thing is establishment of standards. Second thing is measuring and comparing actual performance with standards. And then the third thing is taking corrective actions. Now, let us look at the steps one by one. First, establishment of standards. Okay. All right. Let me just admit a few of the students here. All right. Okay. Now, establishment of standards. The first step in the control process is setting up of standards of performance. A standard acts as a reference line or basis of actual performance. Standards should be set precisely and in quantitative terms. Standards expressed in vague or general terms such as costs should be reduced or rejection, sorry, rejections should be reduced are not specific, as cost should be reduced by 10% or rejection should be reduced by 0.5%. Standards are used as a criteria for benchmarks by which performance is measured in the control process. Since standards cannot be set for entire operation, each organization must first develop its own list of key result areas for the purpose of control. Different standards of performance are set up for various operations at the planning stage. As a matter of fact, planning is the basis of control. And what is establishment of standards? Establishment of standards is to set a benchmark. It's to set the basis of the performance. Right? Now, how should a standard be? Standard should be very specific. It cannot be general. For example, you just cannot have a standard stating that from the next financial year, the performance or let us say the productivity of the organization should be increased, should be just increased. Okay, so this is not a standard because there is no specificity to this statement here. But on the other hand, if you say that the productivity of the organization by the next financial year has to be increased by 10%, when it is more specific, it is more clear. So such statements could be a standard, right? So remember, standards should not be general. They should not be expressed in vague or general terms. They should be specific. Okay, So the next point is, when are the standards set? So basically standards are set in the planning phase of the management. In the planning phase of the management. And hence, planning is the basis of controlling. So without planning, you cannot imagine controlling. It's clear? All right. Now, standards ought to be flexible in order to adapt to changing conditions. For example, a new salesman who seems to be an above average performer should have his sales standards adjusted accordingly. Every objective, goal, policy, procedure, and budget becomes a standard against which actual performance might be measured. However, in practice, different types of standards used are: first one is physical standards, such as units of production per hour; cost standards, such as direct and indirect cost per unit; revenue standards, such as sales per consumer; capital standards, such as rate of return of capital invested; intangible standards, such as competency of management and employees. All right. So all these could act as standards for measuring the performance. All right. So the next one is measuring and comparing the actual performance with standards. The second step in the control process is measuring the actual performance of individuals, groups, or units and comparing it with the standards. The quantitative measurement should be done in cases where standards have been set in numerical terms. This will make evaluation easy and simple. In all other cases, the performance should be measured in terms of qualitative factors, such as in the case of performance of industrial relations manager. His performance should be measured in terms of attitude of workers, frequency of strike, and morale of workers. In general, measurement of performance can be done by personal observation, as in the case of the subordinates being observed while they are engaged in work, or by a study of various summaries of figures, reports, charts, and statements. So basically, in this step, what we do is we measure the actual performance, okay, against the standards. Okay. Now, how should a performance be measured? It is very obvious. If the performance of it is measured in the quantitative terms, in the numerical terms, then the measurement of it becomes much more easier, much more clear. There would be no ambiguity in it. But sometimes, you cannot measure all the performance of every individuals in terms of quantity, in quantitative terms. So uh, in that scenario, some qualitative factors have to be defined. Based on that, you could measure the performance of an individual or a group or a unit. Okay. Now, the third step is taking corrective action. So the first step was to set standard, which we already know is done in the planning phase. The next one was to measure the actual performance against the set standard. Now the third one is taking corrective action. So basically, what would you do if the performance is not up to the defined standards? So basically, you have to do some corrective actions. You have to do some corrections, right? So exactly that should be done here. The final step in the control process is taking corrective action so that deviation may not occur again in the objectives of the organization are achieved. This will involve taking correct certain decisions by management, like replanning or redrawing of goals of reassignment of classification of duties, It may also necessitate reforming the process of selection and training of workers. This control process may require changing all other managerial functions. If the standards are found to be defective, they will be set up again in the light of observation. Joseph Messing has pointed out that a manager may commit two types of mistake at this stage. The first one is he may take action when no action is required. The second is he may fail to action when some corrective action is needed. A good control system should provide some basis for helping the manager estimate the risks of making either of these types of errors. Of course, the final test of a control system is whether correct action is taken at the correct time. What are the corrective actions? Right. So any action that is taken to lift up the performance to the set standards is a corrective action. It could be anything as stated in the slide here. It could be like replanning or redrawing of the goals, or it may be like classification of activities, reassignment of the responsibility, okay, or it could be anything. But remember, now there are two types of errors that the states could happen at this point in time. The first one is taking corrective action when the corrective actions are not required. It may happen with some managers that they may think the performance is not actually up to the standards. But in fact, the set standard could be unrealistic. So you have to work on the standards that is set rather than giving corrective action to 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 the performance, right? So here a corrective action is required, but on standards, not on the performance. But you may end up applying it at the wrong side, so that may happen. Or the second type of a mistake is, he may fail to apply the corrective actions when no corrective actions are required. Okay, or he may fail to, you know, take action if when a corrective action is needed. So these are two types of, you know, mistakes that a manager can make in this at this point of time. Right. So the next one is control methods. Now there are two types of control methods. The first one is past-oriented controls. Past-oriented controls measure results after the process. These are also known as post-action controls. They examine what has happened in the past for a particular period. Examples of past-oriented controls are accounting records, school grade reports, etc. These controls are used to plan future behavior in the light of post errors or successes. They can also be used for rewarding, disciplining, training, or promoting individuals. Alright. So what is past-oriented control? Now he clearly states here, past-oriented control measures the results after the process. So when does the measurement happen here? The measurement happens after the process is completed. Okay. Then the performance is taken into consideration and is measured against the standards. So this is past-oriented controls. The next one is future-oriented controls. These are also known as feed-forward control or steering control. These controls are designed to measure results during the process so that action may be taken before the job is done or the period is over. Feed-forward control serves as warning post principally to direct attention, rather than to evaluate. Examples of such control are cash flow and fund flow analysis, network planning, etc., which help managers to see that they will have problems in such areas of cache or on-time delivery unless they take prior action. So basically, future-oriented control is nothing but is a feed-forward mechanism. Okay? Feed-forward control or feed-forward mechanism of steering control. So here, the performance is monitored during the process, not after the completion of the process, but during the process because they want to have a real-time check on it. They want to see if the process is running as per as per the plan. If it doesn't, then they feed up some corrective actions into the system so to achieve the performance. Let us look at the comparison of post-oriented, past-oriented, and future-oriented controls. Now you can see here you have two types of controls. One is future-oriented towards the left side of your screen. The other one is past-oriented towards the right side of your screen. Now there is an input here, there is a process, and you have an output. Okay. Now, a future-oriented control monitors the input. It also monitors the output. Also monitors the output. And you can also see a feedback from the input and the past-oriented control. Similarly, a feedback from process and the past-oriented control. So basically, it is to say that a future-oriented control has the monitoring system towards input as well as the process, whereas past-oriented only gets the feedback from the input side, the process, but the actual monitoring of a past-oriented control happens at the output and not at the input or the process. All right. So this completes the second module of your syllabus. All right. Now, if anybody have doubts, queries, or if anybody wants to elaborate on any of the concept, please let me know in the chat box. And if you don't have one, you could also type no queries. Hello. If you have a query, or if you want me to elaborate on any of the concept, you may state that in the chat box. And if you don't have any query, just type in that you do not have any query at this point of time. Alright, I can see some of the messages there that you do not have any doubt. Okay. It would be nice if all of you could type in your feedback if you have any query, or if you don't have, please type in as that you don't have any query. Okay, thank you. Thank you, most of you typing in the message. Alright. Okay then. If none of you have any queries regarding the concepts that were taught today, then I would like to end the class at this point of time. So, any other queries, if not related to this subject, regarding the assignment or test, any other queries? Okay, seems like there are, yeah, hello, yeah, seems like there are no queries. Yeah. Okay then, thank you very much for attending the class and have a wonderful day. Thank you. God bless you.